programs.
Exactly.
That, and some people are for, some people are against.
Several major insurers support these. Nationwide, for instance,
they would,
has been promoting.
because they would like to get away from that risk.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because they'll maximize their profits if they don't have to pay for those large losses.
What a set of ironies we're into at this time. Here we have the conservatives saying, get rid of the mandate for the health care, get rid of the mandate that falls away. The insurance company is going to abandon health care. And here you have government saying we can't do it this way. We're going to abandon the insurance companies there. The insurance company could ultimately be the big loser here.
I've never known them to be losers.
Well,
no, they're pretty smart.
But you and I have lived a different life that may be coming before us. I mean, what's being inherited down the road. And maybe they may become the enemy of all time.
Well, I don't think I'll cry for them. They've been working with insurance companies for all these years.
So you're not sympathetic?
I've always wished I could own an insurance company instead of an agency. Instead of being the worker, I would be the person receiving all the money. Much better.
You're the keeper of the door of the beehive, but you're not the...
And insurance is critical to our social fabric. It really is. In the form that Rich described, as it was created, which was to spread risk and to pool risk. And it's how we can manage things that as individuals we couldn't handle, like a house fire that wipes out a single family. But if everybody in that community is chipping in a little bit of money, then you can cover those large losses. But where the insurance industry is ill-equipped to handle is when entire communities, counties, states get hit at the same time by a mega disaster, or even a mini mega disaster like a Hurricane Charlie.
Well, you do have the earthquake situation in California, but they say the biggest earthquake fault is in St. Louis, in the St. Louis area.
Yes, the New Madrid fault.
The Madrid fault.
It's the largest risk that the insurance industry faces, greater than a Miami hurricane.
How wide would that extend?
How wide?
Yeah. I mean, that's the Midwest. That's where the conjunction of the Ohio and the Illinois,
St. Louis,
Mississippi River, all that area is right there. That could cause massive flooding, every other thing.
Right, and the potential economic damage from a New Madrid quake is several times more than a Cat 5 hitting Miami or Tampa. I think it's the largest. It's the worst disaster in North America that the insurance industry can conceive. But they don't, many companies, and I have family who live in Illinois, have been receiving notices like this notice here about windstorm coverage in Florida, that their policy no longer covers quake. So they would be looking to the federal government.
On this portion. That spread of disaster facing us, an insurance company being something that we would like to trust. I think the public would like to trust them. Doesn't want to face an agent saying, well, your house has been destroyed, I'm only going to give you this much money, and you have to build it this sort of way, blah, blah, blah. We're really in a real predicament.
Well, the insurance policy is a contract, and so it spells out exactly what is covered. And it's been adjudicated in the courts quite a bit, so it's pretty much airtight as to what they're responsible for. A lot of times people expect it to be responsible for things that it's not going to be. Giving a quick example, if you have a windstorm and a hurricane, a lot of times things like if you have to paint your house, it's not covered.
Maintenance. We're going to go to the break right now, and we'll come back. In the pre-conversation or the in-between conversation, the question came, what can we talk about in a single sentence or two? But before that, how did you describe Florida?
Oh, Florida is the single largest profit center for the global reinsurance market. So we are 30% of all of the profits worldwide for a $1 trillion industry.
So the Bermuda extension, Bahamas perhaps, London, all these offshore reinsurers that create the situation that allow for insurance are sucking money out of here like crazy.
An immensely profitable industry.
500% profits, I've heard.
Right.
Richard, you were going to talk about this.
Well, I think there's ways that the insurance industry could move. They never put me in charge to make it happen, but I think there's things that could happen.
Give me a couple.
Well, one thing, and this is a personal opinion, I think that if Citizens would take over the wind insurance risk, wind and hurricane risk in the state, and,
which is a not-for-profit system,
and only manage that portion, and then the other insurance companies could work on just the normal hazards, fire, theft, liability, which is the same, pretty much the same hazards that they experience in any other state. And
so they cannot use the wind and the hurricane as an excuse to gouge people.
Exactly.
And this solution has been proposed since Hurricane Andrew repeatedly in Florida. I've sat through so many task forces.
What's getting in the way?
The reinsurance industry. It's
Do they lobby this?
It is the
big lobbies.
Tremendously powerful lobbies, especially in Washington or behind the scenes. This is an industry that does not like to operate in public. And it is...
Well, the money kind of falls out of their pockets if they do that, right?
Yeah, you should go online to the Herald Tribune's project page for this and look at the pictures of them partying in Monte Carlo.
Is that right? Yeah. Well, I've been to Monte Carlo, and there are people who party there.
Well, bully for you.
Yeah. There's other ideas that I have, but they've never been successfully approached. I think that insurance being the spreading of the risk. I think a lot of times people say they don't want to have any risk, and they take low deductibles, for example. And when I came from Ohio, you could still get a policy without any deductible. Down here, they're getting into higher deductibles where you're talking $500, $1,000, $2,500 deductibles. But just a personal idea, if everybody was mandated to have no less than maybe a $5,000 deductible, a lot of the little claims would disappear. If the little claims are gone, the insurance companies wouldn't have to pay those little claims. They could charge less for their insurance.
But I think your first idea, the one of separating and creating Citizen doing wind and hurricane, makes the most sense. And that's the one that people need to latch on to, it sounds like to me. Well, that's the other thing that people can do besides going naked, they just do liability insurance.
Well, liability is a big hazard, but in the state of Florida, hurricane's a bigger hazard.
Well, if you're worried about the building, but if you're worried about the people, liability is not a bad idea. I've considered it in some properties. I don't.
But if you've got a mortgage, and most people do,
well, if you don't
they
have
to protect that investment.
The people without a mortgage can go to liability.
Right.
And if your land is worth anything, and usually in certain cases, the land is worth as much as with or without the property. That's the other thing that people don't realize or don't think about.
Now, over time, my experience with claims, there's very few liability claims for property compared to the number of claims.
That's why it's low cost. It costs like $500 on a $300,000 property. Yeah, it's very, very low cost.
So there's very few liability claims. So when you're talking about people would rather have liability insurance, that's
but this is
not where their claims
dilemma
are.
Of this reinsurance driving up these costs and then spreading the risks up into all along the entire the Atlantic states, the Gulf states, into Georgia and on up. Pretty awful kind of a way to increase their money and still raise the rates. I mean, they're spreading the increases into a much larger area and still increasing.
One of the problems that we're experiencing here is the insurance companies are able to decide where they will write insurance, and that's not spreading the risk.
No.
And and again, this is my own theory. If the companies were forced to write insurance in all areas, they say, if you want to write in Florida, you have to write everywhere in Florida. And if they were forced to write everywhere, the risk would be spread better, and the insurance companies would then compete to probably get business, which could possibly lower rates.
And you'll have the industry respond that you cannot force a free market to compete, and that's the dilemma.
Well, it might be argued that they're not competing; they're monopolizing. And
manipulating,
well, manipulating, monopolizing, and they're creating a monopoly, and they're controlling it. What is it that's called when gangsters get together and do their thing? There's a RICO laws, rigging everything.
However, if then again, this is my own supposition. If they were forced to write in every area, it wouldn't necessarily be at one rate. In other words,
You
if
could-
they didn't want to write on Siesta Key, the rate could be very high for them on Siesta Key. However, if at least they were an available market, people would at least be able to buy insurance.
We're down to
And
the
then-
last minute.
And then people can, I think they would see that they would compete for the business.
Paige, you're going to keep working on this?
Oh, absolutely.
When does your time run?
We're about halfway through this series, and we have yet to look at the political issues that are driving Florida's response, and the reason why, after more than 10 years of trying to find a solution, the state still cannot, and who keeps killing the solutions.
Is it cannot or will not? Because I had some Republicans on the show earlier this year over the oil spill, and they were disgusted with the money that's being doled out around in the legislature. So maybe the will not is the issue.
Right, right. Yeah,
Follow the money.
It's exactly follow the money. I think that's where we started 2 years ago, and we're just going to keep following that money trail.
And hopefully you can keep your good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Rich.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.